just said, one of the big questions tonight at a time of such heightened security. How did these daredevils manage to slip through unnoticed and climb to the top of one of the world's most iconic skyscrapers? Investigative reporter Dan Krauth continues our coverage and is here now. Dan.
Liz, right now, the NYPD is reviewing surveillance video from inside the Empire State Building. The two appeared to access the spire from a hatch on the 102nd floor, one that's usually used for maintenance. It's the proposal seen around the world, one that takes security breaches to new heights at one of the country's most iconic buildings.
It's quite a disturbing breach.
Greg Sanfilippo is former NYPD who now works in corporate security.
And this is every commercial real estate security's worst nightmare, is someone getting access to the roof or ledges of their building.
I spoke with an engineer who's been to the top of the Empire State Building, work that's usually only done at night when the antenna and the radiation emitting from it is turned off. He says the couple would have had to have made their way past the main observation deck here, all the way up to the top deck that's circular and enclosed in glass. Inside here is a locked metal door, preventing people from going up any further.
I didn't see if it was locked, but I just seen them open the door and then hurry up.
One visitor tells us she witnessed the duo open the door, thought they worked there.
Along came these two people and they opened the mesh door and just went upside. So I assumed that they worked there. So nobody stopped them.
How they got the door open, now a major part of this investigation.
They didn't just stumble upon that hatch. There was what we would call pre-observational surveillance. Someone cased the joint, if you will, to find those accesses. They didn't just do this today.
Today's stunt comes as police and private security are already on heightened alert with the 250th anniversary of America celebrations and the World Cup, a major diversion of resources, and an incident that's likely causing all buildings and landmarks to review their own security protocols.
Could have been a lot worse had they had any sort of bad intentions.
Now we wait to see what the two are officially charged with. Back in 2018, when a woman scaled the Statue of Liberty, she was charged with trespassing and sentenced to 5 years probation and 200 hours of community service, Liz.
And who said you can't find love at the top of the Empire State Building? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Let's Talk Live here on the LTL Media channel. You probably noticed me. I am a lot slimmer and trimmer. I'm feeling great. My official weight loss since May 18th, I am down officially today 17.6 pounds, and I have another 5.2 to go. I'm feeling great. I've been working on myself, my mental health, all that fun stuff. And feeling really good. So welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. Make sure to smash the like button when you come in. All right. I hope everybody has their thermostat turned up to 78 degrees. I don't know if you saw this story. You see this story? This is laughable. Out of New York. And then we'll get into tonight's feature presentation. But out of New York, Mayor Mamanani can't even get the city hall to stick to a 78-degree rule as temperatures in buildings hit as low as 54 degrees. If you haven't seen this, the mayor in New York is asking everyone in New York to save power on the grid to turn their thermostat to 78 degrees. Fuck that. There's no way that I would. That's too hot. 78, that's not your fucking room temperature. Room temperature is what, 72? 72 degrees, and he wants you to turn it to 78 because there's too much strain on the grid. But according to this report, you know, their buildings, the offices are at 54 degrees. Temperatures inside City Hall plunge to as low as 54 degrees Thursday during the ongoing heat wave, despite Mayor Mamanani's urging New Yorkers to set their air conditioners to a blimey 78. The Post found. Sweaty Post reports armed with an infiltrated thermostat at test spots, 20 test spots within the City Hall and other municipal offices and buildings where they're able to access. All but 5 of them were below 78 degrees. The heat for thee, but not for me revelation comes after Mamanani got roasted online on Wednesday when he recommended New Yorkers set their ACs to 78 degrees or higher to help avert potentially dangerous Con Edison power outages. Fuck that. My temperature is going to be set at 68. So, yeah, there's no government official that's going to tell me what to set my thermostat at. So They can have it at 54 inside the political buildings. I can have my thermostat set at 68. All right, let's get into tonight's program. So I came across a pretty awesome video that hit my feed the other day, and it's out of a channel from Ian Bick, and he has a podcast called Locked In, and he actually interviewed a retired Mass State Police trooper that was on the job for 10 years. His name's Tony Bova. And I'll give you a little bit of highlights about the interview. So said it was a very difficult path becoming a Massachusetts State Trooper after hundreds of rejection letters. We're going to hear about that in this interview. And the Mass State, what he's going to talk about what the Mass State Police Academy was like. I'm very interested in get to that. I listened to some of it today, and some of the things that I heard are absolutely shocking. And you know, as you guys all know, I've been covering the Enrique Delgado Garcia case. There's a court hearing next week, and I will be updating everybody about that and talking about that as well. And then you're just going to talk about the realities of becoming a trooper, what its life is like on the road, traffic stop, pursuits, domestic violence, drunk drivers, and highway detail. You're going to talk about why highway work is one of the most dangerous parts of the job and the pressures of making split decisions while staying calm under stress. So we'll talk about that as well. And, you know, so I want to get in this, his divorce, his emotional struggles, and the dark place that reached him still while wearing the badge. So this sounds like a really great interview. Again, I went through some of it, kind of got all the cliff notes here, but let's hear it straight from the mouth. So let's pull this up and go through this. I'm really excited to go through this entire thing and listen to it. Again, this is Ian Bick, Locked In, and let's listen to this. I think this is going to be a great interview. Here we go.
My guest today got rejected from law enforcement multiple times, became a Boston paramedic first, finally broke through to the Massachusetts State Police, and then spent 10 years working everything from traffic stops to homicide investigations. And he'll tell you that the hardest parts of his career had nothing to do with the job itself. They were personal. His name is Tony Bova. He medically retired at the 10-year mark, and these are the cases he still can't let go of.
I grew up in Western Mass, so like right in Hadley, and you know, like the UMass Amherst area of country, kind of had the Northampton vibe. So it was an interesting place to grow up.
What was your upbringing like?
My upbringing. So my parents, my dad specifically, his side of the family they're immigrants from Italy. So I had a lot of Italian heritage that kind of came up, and mostly we grew up kind of in this church environment, and I feel like I kind of grew up a little naive to certain things. I had a lot of black and white.
And what I'll do is, if you want to watch this without my commentary, the link for this show is in the description. So if you want to watch this on your own without my commentary, please feel free to do that afterwards. Or if you want to just say, fuck Brian, we're going to just go watch it on our own, you can do that too. So again, let's sit back. Let's listen to this. I think this is going to be really great, really eye-opening. Especially, I'm very in tune about the academy. I want to hear more about that. And as you know, I actually, not too long ago, and you can read about it on my website, ltlmedianews.com, I actually interviewed a former trooper and asked about Jennifer Penton, about the academy, the boxing program, and you can check that out on my website. And I'm going to drop the link in the chat. And anybody that's new here, please go check out ltlmedianews.com, and you can check out that article after this live stream. So let's get back to Tony Bova, and let's listen to him as life as a 10-year veteran at the Massachusetts State Police. Here we go.
Rules, not like they were really pushing it. Like my parents were really great and really loving and stuff like that, but just kind of had this ideology that I was kind of growing up in, and struggled a lot. Actually, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was like in first grade, was held back, struggled throughout school, and just always kind of felt like I was like struggling through life from a very early age. Just kind of felt very different to like what everybody else was experiencing. I felt like it was just harder for me. So it was just kind of an interesting, like when I look back at it, I'm like, like, okay, makes kind of sense. Nothing crazy kind of happened, but yeah.
What kind of blackened rules were you referring to?
When I think about like the Bible and like the 10 Commandments and stuff like that, parents were high school sweethearts. And so the story I grew up in was they were high school sweethearts, didn't have sex before they got married. And so I kind of lived with this, like, sex was bad, shame, stuff like that. And I ended up losing my virginity when I was like 17. And it like crushed me. Like it wasn't a good experience. And so I actually stopped having sex until I got married at 25 and had this like really warped understanding about sexuality. And that kind of shaped a lot of like shame and like how to operate as a man, like what actually kind of shows up for us time and time again, and how I was trying to experience what they were saying, like who Jesus was, and I never really could really connect with it. I thought I did, and I always just felt like things were just like there's so much resistance, and it was like those rules. I kind of made these rules up as I was going along in church camp and went to a Presbyterian church. Felt like I was like this sinner because that's what I was told I was, that everything was predestined, that I had no control, and kind of lived very depressed through most of my life, like not realizing it, but like didn't really have a lot of friends when I was in middle school. I didn't really kind of blossom until I was like a senior in high school. And it was just kind of like a kind of lonely thing to grow up in and not really realizing it. Like I had no idea. Nobody really talked about this stuff. I didn't have an understanding of like what was going on for me. So
What was your parents' line of work?
my dad, so initially when I was growing up, he was a campus director for this organization called the Navigators. It was a parachurch. So they would be on college campuses doing ministry work. And he would do that full time. And he also was a CPA. And he started his own firm, became an entrepreneur, and grew his firm pretty big in the Northampton area. It was one of the largest firms in
I'm
Western.
going to skip ahead here. I want to get to pursuing law enforcement. I mean, no shine on his background, his family background, but let's get to his pursuit in law enforcement. We'll just skip ahead here. Here we go.
I was like, I want to be in the shit. So I want to be in a city. And so we moved to Boston because the hiring process was you had to live in the city. And so I had a bunch of friends. We all moved.
Let's go back.
And the law enforcement accreditation, but still made it. And like, still like, I think I only had like 1D, which was like
All
pretty,
right, let's listen
like
here.
I had like a C- average in high school, something like that. So I was like pretty proud of that, like being able to focus on that. And because I really wanted that career. And then I had an opportunity. I worked a summer job as a summer police officer in Provincetown when they had, I don't know how their program is anymore because the law enforcement accreditation stuff have changed so much, but I worked a summer there, and that was like an interesting job because it was like, we actually had a firearm. Like I didn't have a firearm at UMass. It was handcuffs, arrest powers, but no firearm. And so I had a firearm. It was like more law enforcement, but then we were just like standing around doing nothing. And we would see like, it was kind of crazy in Provincetown. It's like like no rules kind of thing. And I had decided I was going to move with a bunch of friends to Boston because I wanted to get on Boston PD. I wanted to be in the shit. Like I was going to join the military and be a Marine.
Wonder if he was there when Brian Albert was there and Jennifer Penton. Wouldn't that be interesting? There's always the connection. There's always the connection between the Boston PD and the state police and all these people that are involved. I wonder
My
if
mom was like,
he
"No,
served
you're not
with
doing
Brian
that." And I
Albert.
was like 18 at the time. I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I was like, I want to be in the shit. So I want to be in a city.
Exactly.
And so we moved to Boston because the hiring process was you had to live in the city. And so I had a bunch of friends. We all moved to the city. And it was 2008 when the recession crashed. And it was like fucking impossible to get on law enforcement at that time because everybody wanted to become a cop because everybody was getting laid off. And it was that was a very dark phase for me because I had been working so hard to get into this career, and then it was just so difficult to get into it. And I was just like taking tests, and I was applying to agencies, and I was super honest on my background, investigations, like smoked weed in high school. Like I think I sold a joint one time, and not realizing like that honesty was like holding me back and how unhonest other people were. and how they were getting on, because it's just like, oh, I didn't do that. And like, I was just like too honest, not realize I was like so naive to it. I was like, oh, they'll see my integrity, because integrity is what matters in law enforcement. And so they'll see that, and that because I'm willing to say this, then, you know, they'll see that I'm a good guy. And I got rejected so many times. I think I applied to 300, like over 300 agencies in various capacities. Some were just applications, some were tests, some were interviews.
I remember back in the late 90s, maybe 99, just turning 2000, 2001. Within that 3-year span, I know it was definitely before 9/11. I had a local police officer that lived across the hall from me. I lived in an apartment complex, and he lived across the hall from me. And he went out and actually tried out for the LAPD. He wanted to get on to the SWAT team out there, and he said that it was so incredibly tough. The course that they put them through, it was like a 3-day or 4-day course. He flew out, and he said it was so rigorous and so demanding that like no one was passing this course. It was crazy. And unfortunately, he got rejected. But he said the experience just to go through it and be through that and see how the LAPD, you know, work in such a, you know, a large city, and how their SWAT team works, and, you know, how the action is just so fast there. He said it's just beyond anything that you would see as a local, you know, a small town local police officer. But and he was very physically fit and, you know, weightlifter and all that stuff. And he said he couldn't complete the course. It was too hard. It was way too hard. All right, back to this.
Traveled so like the whole US. Like I was out in Oregon. I took like 4 or 5 different exams out in Oregon. I took every major city on the East Coast, like New York City, DC, Pentagon, everywhere.
And no one hired you.
No one hired me. I got close a couple times. I think I did like 8 background investigations or something like that. But it was one of the harder parts for me was the amount of fucking paperwork I had to do and like dig up all this stuff to like be able to prove how like I'm not a shitbag or something like that, or whatever it was. So they want all this information. And it was just like fucking rejection after rejection after rejection. And so I went through that for about a couple of years, and I ended up getting married at 25. And I just was like kept after it. I was working, I did loss prevention for a while. And I got a job at Mass General Hospital, and that was actually a pretty cool job. Actually, I did like police and security there. I got my special state police license, and like, yeah, it was like I felt good. I'm like, oh, I have law enforcement powers. It was like some kind of segue into like feeling significant. But I actually had a lot of fun in that job, because it was just like some of the things that happened inside the hospital. Like we had shootings there. We had like tons of fights. We like the guys that I connected with, we were all like a close group of people. And it was a lot of like, I enjoyed those people, and I enjoyed.
Yeah. My mom used to work in a hospital for like 18 years. And I'm sure if there's any, you know, medical nurses or doctors that are watching tonight, she said there was a lot of fights inside the ER where she worked. And, you know, they always had to have security or police officers come in, and just gets like really wild and out of hand. But yeah, it's crazy. So I want to make everybody aware, I do have a super chat goal at the top, just 5 super chats tonight. That'll hit the goal. Any denomination would really help out the channel here and keep things moving along. Of course, if you don't want to make a donation at the top, you can click on the link, and I have Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal as well too. And always, you can become a member. Just hit that $ at the bottom of the chat. You can become a member there, and that supports the channel monthly. So, all right, let's get back to this. I'm really interested in this. I can't wait to hear about academy culture, you know, from what we know and how this is all going to line up. And you're going to be really surprised. A lot of the things you're going to hear, a lot of things that I've talked about as well inside the academy. All right, here we go.
Like the camaraderie that we had.
What was the main reason for your denials across those 300 agencies?
So it depended. So like early on, like I wasn't this fit as I am right now. I was like I think when I got married, I was like 235 pounds. So I was like pretty heavy.
You were 235?
Yeah. I was 235. There's different phases of like stuff that I went through in the last like couple of decades, but I was 235. So I fucking sucked at running. I told myself I was a bad runner.
In my
Like
world.
this was like, and so I had to get the discipline to get myself where I could pass the PT test. And so I
Can't
finally
fucking
passed
run.
the PT test, and then it would be like a background issue. And then it would be like, I remember this was, I went up to Durham, New Hampshire, and that was like pretty close to where I grew up in New Hampshire. It was like actually the university my dad worked at doing college ministry. So it was like it was the same town as that. And I went there. They had this hiring process that was like, it was like everything was compacted, where typically it can take up to a couple of years to get hired by an agency. Now it's probably pretty different because they need people and the standards have like really dropped. But at that time, it was like you could be 1,000, 2,000 applicants for one spot. And they did this hiring process where they did the PT, the interview, the test all in one day. And I had been working really hard with the PT stuff. I passed everything. The next fucking day, I got a letter from them saying, "Hey, you passed all this stuff, but we're not taking you." I was like, what the fuck? Like, I keep just trying and trying and trying. And it was just like failure after failure. Like, yeah, I literally have like a binder at home that has like 150 something rejection letters inside of it. Like I still have it. And I don't know like why I kept that, but now I'm like, oh, I think this is part of my story now. And it like reminds me of like everything that I went through to get to this.
Oh, and by the way, what have I always said about a great interview? What have I always said about a great interview? A host does what? A host does what? They shut the fuck up and let the guest talk. I love that. We haven't heard the host once in 16 minutes. I love it. Doesn't talk. Just shut the fuck up. Let the guest talk.
Job. And there was like so many moments. I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I don't think this is going to happen, because it'd been about 8 years. This is right around my first daughter was born. I started to transition. I had like this semi-mentor at the hospital that I really like connected with. He's like, yo, you got to go get your paramedic license, get on the fire department. It's a way better job. They have a better schedule. Those guys are happier. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I got my EMT, then I got my paramedic license. And I ended up applying to Boston EMS and got into their Boston EMS Academy, which was actually, it was like probably, it was intellectually more challenging than the State Police Academy. Because of all the medical stuff, and their standards for understanding medicine and anatomy and all that stuff was like really, really high. And so it was extremely challenging. Like the physical fitness piece of it, I killed that piece in comparison, because I was like, had been prepping up at that point. And a year after, so I was like kind of on this different trajectory, and I was going to go into like fire and 24-hour shifts and stuff like that. And I get on Boston and I get fucking 2 letters in the mail. One of them's from the State Police and one of them's from Boston Police. And I was like, I just spent 2 years and like 10 grand on this paramedic license. Now I'm confronted with this. Like, I've been working for this for so long. I did not want to get on the State Police. I didn't want to go through their academy. I knew it was like one of the hardest in the country. I like heard story after story about, like, I've seen when I was working at UMass, there was a couple guys that got on there and they didn't make it through the academy. And like, just like getting to that point, and then because they had like
or how about joining the academy and then getting fucking killed by, people in the academy? How about that? We've seen that.
30 to 35% dropout rate or attrition rate. And It's just like,
35%
this is the hardest one. Like,
dropout rate. 35% dropout rate. And I think it's actually higher than that now. I actually think it's higher than that.
most other ones, you probably make it through. Like if they paid for you to go to the academy, they wanted you to get through it. The state police didn't give a shit. They were just like, if you can't fucking meet the standard, you can't cut this. Like, we will beat the shit out of you until you quit. And so I knew that going in. I was like, I don't know if I want to be a trooper. I don't know if I want to be, even though it was like the thing that started it, right? It was like there was a trooper on the side of the road, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. It wasn't, I didn't want to be on the highway pulling people over and writing good people tickets. Like, this just didn't resonate with me. I wanted to be in the shit. And
I think it's very important, I think it's very important for people to learn all that you can about the Mass State Police Academy, especially with Enrique Delgado Garcia's case. I just don't understand why more people don't talk about that case. I mean, there is so many elements to that, to what happened behind those academy walls, that we should be paying more attention to. And no one talks about that. I mean, I'm glad that I talk about it. I'm glad that I rally for Enrique, and I support his family, and I support that cause. But we need more people talking about this, because if it starts at the academy and you have troopers that are dying out of the academy, I mean, that's one of the biggest scandals in itself. And wait till this gets to pretrial and trial with Enrique, and we start hearing more. Okay. But I'm not stopping talking about that case. I will absolutely continue talking about his case and support that family and support that cause. All right, let's get back to this video. We're going to start getting into academy culture here pretty soon, and we're going to hear about it. Very interesting.
I was like the first agency to give me an opportunity. I was like, fuck, well, I've been working for almost 10 years on this. I got to do it. And I started going through the process. It took about 2 years to go through the process.
Why did they send you a letter, Boston PD and the state troopers?
So in Mass, I don't know if it's changed much, but we had civil service. And so with civil service, it was like one test that was given every 2 years. So like, if you didn't score well on that test, then you like shit out of luck for like 2 years. And then after that 2 years, you don't know how long it's going to take to get your name on the list. And if they exhaust that, like if they don't get to your name by the next test, you have to start over again.
Sucks.
And so it's like this waiting game in Mass. A lot of agencies like moved away from that. So some of them they put on their own test and they weren't a part of civil service.
I agree, Colin.
So they could put on a test whenever they wanted. But if you were part of civil service, you had to wait for this test. And so like I had taken that test because I took the fire test and the police test, like, because they would interchange every other year. I took it probably like 8 or 9 times. I finally figured out how to take the fucking test to actually get us a high enough score. Because the first time I took it, I think I got like an 80 or something like that. And not realizing, like, you literally had to lie on the test in order to get a high grade, because some of the questions were like they were more behavioral questions, like, do you speed, or do you do any of these bad things? And if you're honest on the test, you're actually going to have a really fucking low grade. And so I was like, oh, so or one of the things that I was like talking to a bunch of different people about it, but like they had like a type of test where like there's like 5 answers, like, do you strongly agree, do you agree, neutral, do you disagree, or do you strongly disagree? And if you did anything in the middle, it actually reduced your score. You had to have like an opinion. And so like finding out that, like, it was never you could answer something in the middle, you had to go high or low.
Wow.
And like finding out, like, took years to figure out these little things about the test. And so eventually when I took that last test, I got like a 98 or something like that. And that was how I got the state, Boston. At that point, it's funny how like everything just kind of comes in all at once. And I think I had like, I don't know, 20 or 25 letters from other fire departments because I had my paramedic license. So that gave me essentially like preference.
Yeah, it made you more of an asset probably.
Well, based on the test, they would pull a paramedic list. So if you weren't a paramedic, you wouldn't even be on the list. So like you had to get that to get on certain fire departments. And so it was like a requirement, because otherwise, unless you were a veteran, like veterans got extra points. or like Boston, they would, if they wanted more minorities, they pull like the Spanish speaking only list. So if you put down that you spoke Spanish fluently, then you could be on this special list that would get you higher soon. Because if they needed more people to speak Spanish, then they would pull from that list. And same with like female cops. Like they had a female only list. Like if they needed more female officers, they would pull from that list. So if you were male, like if you were white, male, non-veteran, it was like nearly impossible to get on Boston PD unless you scored like a 99 or 100 at the time. And they did that for a long time. I think recently
It's legal. Is that even legal to have lists like that? Is that even legal to have lists like that? That's like very discriminatory, right? If anybody's ever looked into that, a list categorized by minority or what you speak, what language you speak, if you're a woman, if you're a male, how is that even legal?
they like but things have kind of changed because the environment's changed a lot. Like, and a lot of people don't want to be cops anymore.
Yeah, don't say.
Just because culturally, like, it's just become a lot more difficult job. But yeah, that was like, and then I finally got it and went into the State Police Academy. It was fucking hard. I remember like when I about halfway through, I was like, okay, like I'm going to be able to, I wasn't quite sure. Cause I remember like the first day they had us lined up in the chow hall. They called it, like the dining common.
Oh, listen to this. This is crazy. I was listening to this earlier. Listen to what they did.
And they had us all fucking lined up just waiting for like fucking 20 minutes, like all standing at attention. We don't know what the fuck's about to happen. They were all nice to us for like the first hour or two. And I went there with two other buddies from Mass General. So the three of us drove up together, and
listen to this.
4 of us had applied. 1 got disqualified. And then, so it was the 3 of us. And so it was the only people I knew at the academy, and they split us up or something like that. And I'm standing there waiting, and all of a sudden the DIs come in and they just fucking start screaming at us. And like, there was like nothing that we could do that was right. And I saw this guy looking across from me. He was like right across from me. He's looking at me. He's like trying to tell me to like knock something off. And I was like, what the fuck is this guy? Like, just fucking mind your business and like worry about yourself. Never fucking saw him again. Like, he either like quit or I don't know what happened to him, but I never saw him again. I was like, and then the chaos inside of that environment, like I didn't remember names. I didn't like maybe pick up faces because it was so chaotic that you were so focused, like you didn't have your peripheral vision. And that was one of the things I learned in the academy was like, how do I utilize my peripheral vision differently, especially in stressful environments? Because then, I'm looking out to my left and my right, and I can see if a DI is coming or like the threats and stuff like that. It was like interesting how it all kind of played into like everything they did was so intentional. And I see that now. At the time, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm walking into. Wow. But it was, and they've changed the standards so much. I think, I heard recently with one of my buddies, like they're changing the complete structure of it. It's too harsh. It's too hard. I'm like, oh man, like gonna be a lot of weak cops coming in to a job that's really fucking stressful and very difficult. And like, you have to be able to have that emotional discipline to be able to stay grounded, because especially today, like you can't fucking lose your shit because you're going to be gone. And
so he agrees with the academy culture. I got to get this guy on my show. I want to hear more about academy culture. I want to dig into this. I've got to find a contact for this guy. I want to pick his brain on the academy. So he agrees that it should be as tough as it is, because he feels in his opinion that if it's not, you're going to come out of this and be a very weak police officer. Interesting. All right, let's listen.
So it's going to be kind of an interesting transition to see what happens in law enforcement in the next 10 years.
Do you think they relaxed it because there's not that need, or people don't want to necessarily become cops right now?
Some of that happened. We had a death in the academy a couple of years ago. And we've had the state police has had a lot of scandals in the last, when I came on, it was like the beginning of like scandal after scandal after scandal. And it changed so much from what I remember what it was to what it is now. It's just not even the same job. It's the scrutiny and the fear, and like it used to be like so autonomous, like you had autonomy, like there was not anything really like you could do that was going to get you in trouble or fired, or not to say like you had, you know, complete immunity to like just whatever you did, but like there was certain guy like war stories I've heard of like veteran officers that did fucked up shit and didn't get fired and would get re-promoted, and it was just like a weird environment. Now you know you have guys doing their job and they're getting pulled into internal affairs for shit that like that.
Oh, you don't say. Veteran police officers doing really fucked up things and not getting in trouble? You don't say. You don't say.
Whoever's investigating those internal affairs were doing way more fucked up shit like 10, 20 years ago than what's happening right now. And so it's like all flip-flopped. And they'll say, well, you know, it's perception. It's like, well, the, you know, societal, it's all about perception. Like society shifts, so you got to shift. And it's like, yeah, but this isn't reality. Like these guys, like it's become such a difficult job now. Like one of the things, like you have to make split fucking second decisions as a cop. Like I have no time to think about this. And you're going to come and have 6 people investigate for fucking months and months and months, talking to everybody about what I should or shouldn't have done. And there's just the support on the backing of that is just gone now, because it was understood that we made split second decisions. And I think that's been like a big downfall of like the mental health of law enforcement, is because like that the brotherhood's gone. Like guys are just fucking miserable, complaining, frustrated, like they don't feel like they're getting paid enough, and they have no support. And it becomes like cancerous. And so like that kind of spreads out. And then like there's a lot of fucking good cops out there. There's a lot of guys that are just fucking solid human beings. Like most people don't realize that. Like, you know, a normal citizen doesn't understand how like most guys don't sign up to become a cop to be a fucking asshole. They sign up because they want to, they probably something that happened to them when they're younger and they felt like they need to serve and they want to give. But most guys become a cop because they want to do good shit. And then they come into the system and they see like, huh, this is fucked up. And
I beg to differ a little bit there. But I you know, listen, there are a lot of great cops out there. I'll give you clear examples. LV Cops, love those guys. Great guys. Todd McGee, love that guy. There are a handful of great cops out there. There really are. But we get some really fucked up ones here in the state of Massachusetts. Most definitely. All right, let's keep on here.
There's nothing for them now where they feel supported, because most of society is like, fucking defund the police. We fucking hate you. We only see you on the worst days of our life. And then on the other side of it is like, now you got the brass that were like the hypocrisy of like what they were doing 20 years ago, now criticizing the new guys for the things that like, this is part of the job. Like shit happens. Like I've seen fucked up shit happen. Like how do you, and one of, it wasn't, I didn't turn into a big deal, but I was like, you know, I'm 2:00 in the morning, on Route 2 and like nowhere in fucking Massachusetts, pull over a car. There's 3 kids in it. I pull one of the kids out of the car. He starts getting funny. Like he's just is like starting to like shift around. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And I grab him and he's like reaching into his waistband. And I'm like, bro, I'm going to fucking blow your head off. Like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going with this? And like there's 3 people in the car. He's outside of the car. It's 2:00 in the morning. I don't back up. There's like nothing going on. And he just has a bag of weed in his pants. And weed at this point is like, it's decriminalized. It's not a fucking big deal. And like, that's like, but if he had a gun,
He's
like
dead.
And one of the first car chases I was in, it was after I got out of, I was in break-in, which is like basically our FTO training. We we're following this car at one of the rest areas on the Pike, and we
There's a pause here for a second. Can you imagine that he pulls over a couple kids, the kids wrapping around in his waistband, and this guy thinks he has a gun and ends up killing that kid for weed. Can you imagine that? You know, that's why they always say, like, you get pulled over the police, keep your fucking hands up. Don't be reaching for anything. This is how people get killed, you know, and how awful he would have felt if that was the case. Shot some kid over weed, you know, and thinking that he had a weapon. All right, here we go.
I'm like, this car's sketchy. It's got New York plates, whatever it is. And it's like driving weird. And so we just decided, we pulled it over for like, he was driving in the left-hand lane. So if you're not passing cars, you can technically it's a traffic violation. So we pull them over. We get up to the car. They start refusing things. And so we call for backup, get some like spike strips because this guy's refusing to get out of the car. And I'm like brand new at this point. I'm like, what the fuck are we gonna do? Like, I'm all jacked up on adrenaline. All of a sudden he fucking just rips off and he just like drives down the highway. And we jump in the car and we're fucking chasing after him. And he pulls off the highway and we're following through these streets and this and that. And we spent like 2 hours looking for this car. They abandon it. We find the car. We get it impounded. And it was like a Dodge Charger, like a black Dodge Charger. And in the floor, there's like a hide. So like underneath the floor mat was a hole in the floor. And it looked like it was a hole for a gun. It could have been drugs or whatever, but I'm like pretty sure it was like fucking gun hide. And I was like, how fast that could have went.
Seriously.
Because of that scenario. He was not like, if he had a gun in the car, he was not coming, like he was going. So he was either going to use that, try to run, try to get away. He gave us this license. It was a Connecticut license. I remember this. And it looked real. So we ran it and it came back to somebody different. I'm like, what the fuck? And it was just this fake license, but it looked really good. And, but like in that scenario, like there's so many things that could have went wrong. Or like there was a cop that was recently killed like a couple weeks before that. Might even been around the same week, right around our patrol area. And I think it was like Webster or something like that. I can't remember his name right now, which is like kind of sad. But you know, it was like but it was like all these things that happened so close together. And so like, these are the kind of things that guys are dealing with. This is like, you walk up to a car, you don't know what the fuck's going to happen.
You don't.
And now you don't have any backing. So now in the back of your mind, there's fear of like, well, if I make the wrong decision, I'm going to end up in IA and I'm going to be in trouble and they're going to shame me by posting my stuff, like putting me on orders. And so like, this is what's running on in these guys' minds. And so like guys are now desensitized. They no longer want to do work.
Yeah,
they'd rather just sit in their car and do nothing and respond to calls than actually be proactive or do these things, because they're like, well, why the fuck would I do this? Because I'm more likely to get in trouble for doing my job. And so now it's like, well, I don't want to do anything because if I do that, then I'm going to get in trouble. And so like, that was like that was a transition of what I saw happen culturally. And because when I first came out, it was like an incredible job. It was like, we owned the road, and like the ego piece was like crazy. Because
I think that's what you get a lot with like the Proctors of the world, that ego, you know, that Teflon, nothing's going to touch me. Nothing's going to ever hurt me, you know, and that's what you got in the language that we've seen in the text messages. The same thing with, Sean Good from Canton PD, the language in those text messages. You know, it's Teflon. No one's ever going to find out. No one's ever going to see this, you know, and that's why they were having those disgusting, racist, misogynist, I mean, any word that you want to throw at these text messaging conversations, you know, and believe me, they're not the only ones. There's more of them out there. There is definitely more of them out there, but it just takes a situation like this, that Proctor and, you know, Good have been wrapped up in, to kind of bring all this stuff to light, because this stuff goes under it's hidden in the shadows forever. until, you know, a big case like Karen Reed, John O'Keefe, come into view and start peeling back all those layers of the onion and expose the real, you know, dark underbelly of investigative work in the police departments in their culture. So it's wild. Just all the things that we found out, we see, we hear because of this one case, you know, the Karen Reed case. All right, let's get back to Tony Bova, former Massachusetts State Police officer. Here we go.
I mean, they really drilled it inside of our heads in the academy, like how much better we were than even local officers. And it was like a weird thing because, like, you know, we're all doing the same job. But the reason they did that was because you're in a cruiser by yourself. Like one of the most intense calls I went on was active homicide. It was like 12 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And my classmate, he's on the desk, and he's like, hey, you know, there's this call. Supposedly this guy shot his girlfriend in the face with a shotgun or something like that. And I'm like,
Christ.
bullshit. Like, no way. And we start getting more calls. We're like, oh shit, like this is probably legit. And my line mate, who was like my partner, so we'd have like one guy on the desk and then two guys in the barracks. He was like at an assignment like in Boston. So I was on patrol by myself. I'm going 30 minutes from the barracks to this location in the middle of nowhere with no radio reception, no cell phone reception, pitch black, no backup. And so they trained us for situations like that, where we had to go into situations by ourselves and be able to command a room, command a scene. They would say like one trooper, one riot, meaning like, and I'd seen this happen at, like, I'd show up to a scene with local officers. If I showed up, everybody shut the fuck up. And because we had this persona with the state police, like, you don't fuck with the troopers. But that's since gone away. And it's like this for good reasons too. Like, I mean, there's guys that did stupid shit and they, you know, they always ruin it for everybody else. And that's kind of like, but it makes the job that much harder. And so it's like a compounding thing of society and culture and the brass and stuff like that. So
what happened when you responded to that call?
Yeah, so I it was one of like the calls that like the hair on the back of my neck fucking came up, because it was like, I mean, I've seen a bunch of different things, but that one was terrifying because I just didn't have, there were so many unknowns. And so I ended up arriving on scene, and thank God I had like 4 local guys that were like the town over showed up. So the 4 of us, or the 5 of us, got out and we started searching this property where it was chest high grass, pitch black. And all we know is there's a guy in the woods with a shotgun. And I'm like thinking, this guy's going to fucking jump out and I'm probably going to die tonight. It was like a scene out of like a horror movie. It was kind of, it was weird to look back at it, but I only had a pistol at the time. I didn't have a long gun. All these other guys had long guns, which was, thank God. But he had a shotgun supposedly. And so we go and we start searching this property, and we get into the house, and there's a dog barking, and there's lights going off, and there's loud music. And it's like, you would think of like a Halloween haunted house kind of scenario. And we get in there and we find her, and she's deceased. You see like shotgun, like shots into the door and all over the place, and she's gone. And apparently her son was still somewhere on the scene. And it by the time we got out of the house, I was like, okay, he's probably not here anymore. For about 15 minutes, I was like, where the fuck, like, where is he coming out of? And eventually we found out that he wasn't there. He had left, and he went and was like wreaking havoc at his old job or something like that. I mean, he eventually got caught like a couple days later. But yeah, that was an intense scene.
Why'd he kill her?
It was a domestic thing. It was, it was like some, I don't know if it was jealousy, or I wasn't actually involved in the investigation of that particular case. I was on the road at that point.
Wow.
And he, so I'm not quite sure of like all the factual details, and, but he, it was like some it was a very typical like domestic, like abusive relationship. I mean, people don't realize how thin the line is between life and death, and how one decision can lead so quickly to something like that. And I saw that.
Wow, that's pretty powerful coming from a former trooper, because he's seen that. You know, he's walked that line. That's pretty eye-opening. It just tells you, I mean, we are completely blessed to be here in this moment right now, because anything could happen that we just, that's it. We're gone. You know, it can change like that. Wow. All right, here we go.
That a lot. Doing homicide investigations, I did that for about 8 years, and seeing like how quickly life could change for someone. Just simply because of the emotions arise and stuff like that, and people just do these things that they can't imagine that they would have done, because it probably feels like a dream to them. And then all of a sudden now they're in this scenario where, very dark. It's a very dark scenario.
Now, how do the troopers know to respond to a scene like that? Does the city call them in, or do you guys just respond to all homicides, even as patrol?
That particular one, we covered that town because like the way with the state is that there's certain communities that don't have full-time police departments. So that particular community didn't have law enforcement on for that specific night.
So they'll respond.
I think they had they have a chief of police or something like that, but he mostly there during the day and doing more political stuff and stuff like that. They don't have a lot of officers. So we would cover a lot of communities that we covered their 911 calls. So when somebody calls 911, the system is so smart that it knows to either direct it to the local or the state. And if it doesn't know, it directs it to the state, and the state will direct it to the local. And so like we would get calls for that. It just kind of depended. It kind of depended on and we would back up the local offices. We'd have scanners on and stuff like that. And we would be pretty close with some of the local agents, depending on what barracks you were at. But yeah, it would kind of depend.
You were sharing with us earlier the first call or the chase that you went on. How, when you're a new trooper fresh on the job and you experience something like that for the first time, how do you keep your cool? How do you know not to overreact? We do see that with a lot of new officers. There was an incident in Hartford, Connecticut recently, a new trooper on the job overreacting, lost his job and got arrested for it. So how do you stay cool in that environment when you don't have anything to compare it to?
Well, I always kind of come back to training. So one of the things that they nailed into us at the academy was repetition. It was really big in firearms. You're always going to fall down to your lowest level of what your training was. Because when shit hits the fan, your nervous system goes into fight or flight. If you haven't been conditioned for stress, then you're not going to react the way that you think you're going to react. We all think, if I get into a fight, I'm going to win. And it's just part of our ego and our mind of survival. But when you get placed in those scenarios where that humility kind of comes in, you're like, actually, I could fucking die. It kind of changes it. So a big part of it's training, repetition, mindset, and stuff like that. I think that most guys do a pretty good job with that. We kind of kept each other in check too. And there was times where, it was, if I pulled somebody over, it was either I'm writing you a ticket or I'm fucking yelling at you. You're either getting educational lessons, why the fuck did you do that? I'm not going to give you a ticket. Or I'd be I'd write you a citation, which was very rare. You had to be an asshole for that to happen. But it kind of, a lot they
well, at least he was cool in that sense. Like you said, you had to be an asshole to get a citation. I've had 50-50 luck with troopers. I remember last year in the summer, when I was still at the studio over in Rentham. I left. I was out on the highway. It was late at night. It was like 12 or 12:30 at night. I just left the studio, and I was literally going 100 miles an hour. And I was just at my exit off 95, and I got pulled over by a young trooper. And I always, when they approach the car, I always have my license, my registration ready. Always have my hands on the steering wheel with my license and registration. Right when they come over, I just hand it to them and let them do their business. And he was just asking me, like, where are you going? Where are you coming from? All that stuff. And he left. He ran my license, ran my plate, and all that stuff. Came back and just basically said, like, hey, he goes, where are you going? I said, my house is literally off on that exit right there. It's like I just got pulled over before the exit. And he said, I'm gonna give you a verbal warning. He's like, this area is like, there's a lot of crashes in the area. He's like, just like, I don't know, a couple of days ago, kind of the same scenario. Someone was going, well around 100 miles an hour, and they skid off and hit someone. It caused a major accident. And he was just like really cool about it and just said, like, look, I'm out here. I patrol this area. He's like, I'm going to get you off with a warning, but next time, I'm definitely going to ticket you. And he was actually really cool. So he just gave me a verbal, and then hit his lights on. So I didn't have to pull out into traffic and just stay in the breakdown lane, and just went into my exit and left. And, he was really cool about that. So, and then I've had other experience of the troopers where I just do the same thing, and then they come back and they give me a ticket. I've gotten a ticket, and fought that one and actually won. So anyway, here we go.
He gave us some training on like verbal judo and stuff like that, but it wasn't that good. Like for me, it was a lot more emotional discipline through. I was pretty controlled, and then like as I got on the job, a lot of shit happened in my personal life where I started to rebuild from an internal perspective and started having emotional regulation things that I was building in for myself. And so I responded a lot differently, a little bit later than most guys, because I thought about things different. My perspective was different. That made me really good in the homicide investigations because I could relate and connect with people that were, I was really good with the families and like what was going on for them. Like fucking terrible at the paperwork. That was just not my game. But when it came to connecting with the families and doing interviews and stuff like that, I was really patient, and I really like was able to sit with them. And
yeah, exactly.
And, I attribute a lot of that just to being very different. Like a lot of guys had a very negative mindset. And so like, if you're too pessimistic, then you're going to miss shit. Like people are people. And so when you start to boil down, like I didn't just do homicide investigations. I did like child sexual assaults. I did child pornography cases. I did rapes. I did everything because we would cover 2 different counties. And so just like having a wide perspective of people. And one time, I remember this very specifically, like I didn't want to be that guy that showed up on the media. Like it was not my thing. So I wanted to make sure I was like pretty dialed in. And I remember one of my, like I think I was fresh in the homicide unit, and I was with a local officer, and we had this kid, he was like in his 30s or something. He had passed. And I remember him notifying his sister on the phone. And I was mortified by how he did it, because this woman's now hearing that her brother is now passed. And the way he did it was just so detached. Like, ma'am, I need you to answer these questions. It was like, I'm more important in what I'm doing right now. I need you to, and not even giving her a minute to process the information that she just received. Like, you don't typically do notifications on the phone. Typically, you call a local agency to have them notify somebody of a death so that they have it in person, because
a little bit more humanity
more
to it.
respectful.
Yep.
For to give them like a moment of like their loved one just passed. And I remember watching him do this. He was from a local agency, and I was like, I'm never fucking going to do that. Like that's, I would never want to be notified by somebody about my brother or my sister passing because of because you just had no emotional intelligence to be able to just give me a minute to process that information. And so that really set the tone for me, like, especially investigations, like to be present and to, you know, you don't really fully understand what people are going through and like what they're experiencing. And it doesn't mean that like gives them any justification for poor behavior, stuff like that. But like honor the fact that they're human and that they're going through, even if they've done fucked up shit. And like just allow that space and that because you're going to get so much further. Like there's so many cases that were able to be resolved easier because of that, because I gave you a moment to talk and either talk yourself into handcuffs or whatever it was. And a lot of guys want to put guilt or they want to put like a narrative on like what this is, and they already passed judgment before they can actually process like their investigation and stuff like that.
How old were you when you finally got on the job?
33, 32.
Wow, he was
33.
late.
I was,
Wow.
yeah, it was like later.
Is that significantly older than most
Oh,
new
yeah.
troopers?
At the time, and mass, no. Typically, most like up until that point, now it's changed. There's a lot more guys. They have a cadet program, so you can transition and at a younger age. But typically, like guys had worked at another local agency. They were military, and they were all. Most of my class they were 28 and above. So I think we had a guy that was like 35 or something like that, which is aged out. And so most of the guys I was with most of them were military and most of them were like over 28. Now it's changed a bit. Now you have younger guys coming in. The reason for that was just like, that was the mecca of law enforcement, was that everybody wanted to be a state trooper because they got paid the best at the time. There was like the best job. It was the one where you could go to all these units. You had the most freedom. You had the most autonomy. And so everybody wanted it. So it was one of the most competitive in the state. And so it was pretty typical for guys to get on later.
Looking back on it now, do you think it's better that you got on later rather than, you say, like a fresh 19, 20, 21-year-old not mentally stable enough to take on that role?
I don't know. I wouldn't change anything I went through because it's made me who I am today. So I wouldn't be like, hey, I wish I had gotten on earlier. It was definitely a better job when I was younger because like things hadn't shifted as much. But I wouldn't change anything that I've been through to this point because maybe if you asked me a year or two ago, I'd probably say, well, I wish this didn't happen or whatever. But it's everything that I've like being here with you on this podcast has brought me to this point. And so like, I wouldn't change anything that's happening, the good, bad, and everything. And so I don't really know how to fully answer that. I don't think I would change anything, but I do think it's one of those interesting jobs. I don't know if you should do it for 30 years. I don't know if it's like there's just a point where certain guys get to where they just get really bitter because they've seen so much shit and they don't know how to process it. And it's like one of those, it almost should be more like the military, in my opinion, where like you're not doing it for 20, 30 years. Like maybe you do 10 years. And, with the right, if the training was better, like at a younger age, I think it would be pretty good if you actually could train these guys to like what they need. Like they didn't provide enough training after the academy. Like that was an ongoing thing that, with all the money in the world, it would be great. Like you could do all these different things, right? But they don't nearly invest as much into training as they should. Like that would be a game changer. I think if they really locked in on physical standards, if they really locked in on like, providing jujitsu or something like that, where guys really felt competent with like being in a physical altercation, or they did more training with even the emotional pieces, like they're doing a better job of it now, where they have like this Be Well program, or I can't remember what it is, but they're doing more mental health stuff for guys, and it's becoming more acceptable to be more vulnerable about what's like what you're experiencing and what's happened. But it's still like, guys fight it. And like it's just a lot of I mean, I had a buddy who was in the employee assistant unit, and he's just like, dude, like these guys just want to complain. Like they don't want to change anything. They don't want to do anything. They just want to complain about all this sucks and this, that. And so it's just it's like it can be a very negative place.
Sure it can.
No.
Do you think having those, say, 10 or 12 years of life experience after college made a difference before going on to the job?
Definitely. I mean, like because I was always doing something that was kind of related to it.
So Steve 7 says, I'd say older, yes to older, more mature, more used to talking to people. It's easier in de-escalate situations because you may have been there. Yeah, that's true. But the problem, I think, with some of that is that you're going to have a shorter span of time with troopers on the job, rather have someone that comes out of the academy at 21. You have someone like this that got in really late and stayed 10 years, where you could have a trooper that goes in and, they have a longer work history. They're 20, 25 years, excuse me. They're 20, 25 years. So, there's that. We only have people that come in later and they're only going to be there a couple of years. I guess in the sense of like pensions, it would save a lot of money. It would save the taxpayers a lot of money, rather than someone come out and they're 20 or 21 years old out of the academy and they stay 25 years versus someone that might go in at a later age and only stay 5. But that definitely would change a lot of the pension. Here we go.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was always in some kind of field where I was dealing with things that were in front of me that were, I was doing loss prevention. I would like be in like CVS or Home Depot by myself. And there was a couple incidences where like, I don't have anything and I'm getting into fights and stuff like that. And so being able to handle those situations that, people don't necessarily experience every day, like with your nervous system and processing, were definitely helpful. And, my paramedic training was really helpful because there was definitely like incident, like they had one particular instance, there was a car crash and in the middle of a snowstorm, and I like walk up to the car and I'm like, oh, this guy's got a brain injury. Like I could tell instantaneously because of my training, and I went to Boston MS, and so I knew what a neuro injury looked like. And most of the guys, they would operate off of ABCs, which is, you would think like airway, breathing, circulation or something like that. No, ambulance before cruiser. So he was like, where's the ambulance? I don't want to deal with this. And so for me, I felt competent in it. So I was the one that would always like handle the medical issues and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely helped. But then you're also doing a job that's so physically demanding that like, at 33 in the academy, my body just like took a toll.
Yep.
And I've had a couple injuries, shoulder surgery, broke my foot. That's why I left. I have like 3.
And that's the thing. When you bring in troopers that are older, that's what happens. Your age. If I was to run the fucking academy now at 48, there's no way I could do it. I couldn't qualify. I'd probably have a hard time with some of the strength and conditioning. So you have that factor too, where you have someone that's 20, 21. I think you got to be 20. You got to be 20 or 21. I think it's 20 or 21 to come out of the academy. You're young, you're spry, you have, a lot more flexibility, a lot more strength versus someone that goes in and they're 30 or 35 years old, and like you said, he came out with a lot of injuries. I just want to recognize this. Thank you so much, Lindsay. A 1999 super sticker. She has kicked it off here. And I do have the super chat goal at the top. Just 4 more super chats to keep the lights on here at LTL Media. I would appreciate it. I really would appreciate it. I appreciate your support. I really do. I see a lot of the it's crazy to me. I see a lot of shows out there, that literally don't do anything like this. They talk about their personal lives. They talk about other people's personal lives, disparage people, drag people through the court system, and they have money that's literally constantly thrown at them all day long. And I just shake my head and I go, all right, that's what you want to throw your money at. But anyway, we're going to keep doing positive content here, good content here on LTL Media. And I'm proud of where we're at. This channel keeps growing. It keeps going. Subscriber count keeps going up. And I've always said, I just want the growth. I want that damn silver play button and 100,000. It's what I want. But I appreciate the support. Thank you so much. All right, let's go here. Let's see. Sevens says 20 entering the academy as long as you graduate after you turn 21. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I thought it was somewhere 20 or 21. All right, here we go. Let's get back to it.
And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, if a guy can stay physically fit, I think one of the more important things is like, can you stay physically fit? Because like the amount of guys that just kind of lose themselves, and because of the stress and because of like they're working like 100 or like 100 hours a week, like trying to make as much overtime and details as they possibly can to make like to be able to make as much money as possible. Like guys aren't living, they're not living healthy lifestyles. So it's like and if you get into that routine and that rut, like it's hard to break out of that, because the guys out east, some of them, they had to work 2 to 3 details a week just to pay their mortgage because it was so expensive to live out east. And so like they were stuck where if they didn't get those details, it actually would put them in a position where they might lose their house, or maybe they got too nice of a truck and too nice of, I don't know, but like they were kind of stuck having to work those things. So like your time is very valuable. So if you can't, like they did give us workout time, but some guys just didn't use it. Like most of them didn't use it.
What happened to him with the crash?
So I saw like he was having a neuro thing. I actually put like an airway device in his mouth, like called an OPA, and he actually ended up making it. Actually, won an award for it. It was kind of like one of the few awards I won for saving somebody's.
I'll tell you a quick story. I'm going to pause this really quick. I'll tell you a quick story. So my mom dated a guy in the late 80s, and we were living with him, and this was just before he actually left. So he was working as a tow truck driver for a local company here in around one of the surrounding towns. And they did a lot of runs up on Route 1. And, you know, Route 1 back in the 80s was a pretty fucking dangerous place. I mean, it still is anyway, because I think the speed on there is 50 or 55 miles an hour. Luckily, there's a lot more lights to slow down a lot of the traffic. But there used to be this truck stop out there, and trucks would pull out all the time and literally hit cars and kill them, kill the people in the cars. So one night he gets this call, and basically what happened was the truck pulled out, a car was speeding, he went under the truck and basically collapsed, and you know what I'm talking about, collapsed the roof. And so back in the day, a lot of the tow truck drivers, they would have to get into the car somehow and get it into neutral so they could get it, you know, up onto the tow truck so they could pull this car away. So he has to get into the car, but it's El Squasho. So they get the guy out of the car, and he has to go in through the back window. And when he goes in through the back window, he puts his hand down on the back seat. You know, like picture it. You're crawling into the back window. You need to get to the front and just get it into neutral. I'm doing this because that's where we had a lot. The gear shifter was on the column. So he goes in through the back window. He puts his hand down on the back seat to get forward. And as he does that and puts his hand down, he just feels cold and wet. And he looks down, and it's the guy's brain. So he put his hands in the guy's brain, because if you know what I'm talking about, pretty gross stuff. But anyway, ended up getting the car in neutral and getting it towed away.
Life,
right,
but
back to the interview.
yeah, it was I never really heard what else happened to him, but I guess he made it, which was great.
What would you say is the number one cause of crashes in Massachusetts?
Now, fucking distracting driving, like people on their phones. Like you go on the highway and you see people and they're like on their phone, like on the highway on the left lane. I'm like, geez, like you pay attention to the road. like I think because we used to have this. This is before my time. They had the 55 team, and the 55 team was like the elite troopers, and so they would be on the pike, and they would literally be outside of their cruiser. They'd step out into the roadway, point at a car, and pull them over.
Yeah, I remember.
If you did that today, you'd get run over, like
fucking killed.
Absolutely, no doubt. Like, there's just no way you're not getting run over, because people just aren't paying attention. And so like they're not paying attention. They're so distracted with like what's going on their phone and all these different things. Like that was definitely probably one of the biggest things. Like drunk driving.
They used to do that in New Hampshire. That 55, they would stand out on the road and fucking point you over because they're really strict there about speed. I know that because we used to travel up north a lot, up to Vermont, and obviously you have to go through New Hampshire. But they used to, the old school cops, man. They'd be out there with the radar detector and fucking right out in that breakdown lane, pointing that radar detector and just nailing you, and then getting out on the road and pointing you over. And you didn't want to fuck with a New Hampshire trooper back then. Those guys would fucking scream at you. If you were a mile over, they're nailing you and screaming at you.
Pretty common. Like people, that doesn't really change, but especially in Massachusetts because they're so lenient. If you get arrested for drinking and driving on your first offense, there's no consequence. Like you get a quaff.
What's a quaff?
So continue without a finding. So like it's basically like you. If you don't plead guilty, but you plead, I can't remember the exact terminologies, but basically like your first one, like
no contest.
You might get your license suspended for a period of time. That's about it.
120
so people
days.
are like, well, I got a free ticket. Like you go to Arizona, forget about it. It's like they have like a zero tolerance policy. Like you probably end up in jail if you're drinking and driving there. But you come to Massachusetts, like the judges are so lenient on some of these cases, depending on who you get for a judge, didn't matter. And so like, it's like prevalent everywhere.
Are most DUIs on the highways discovered from speeding?
No, I would say they're more, I would say more swerving. People are typically driving slower when they're drinking and driving because they don't want to get pulled over. And so like the speeding aspect, sometimes like there was one time it's interesting. I was living in Boston when I first got on the job and I was commuting to Athol. Athol was like it was like just under where they were going to pay me a little bit more money because I was traveling so far. It was like 73 miles. It had to be 75 miles. And so I'm coming home off shift. I'm already off my shift. I see this car fucking flying, and I'm like, I'm gonna pull him over, and I pull him over. He's going like 90. I'm like, why the fuck did I do this right now? Because he was fucking cocked. Like I pull him over, he's cocked. I'm like, fuck. So like get his car towed, like handle that. But I'm like, I want to get fucking home. Like, why am I doing this right now? But like very rarely would they be like flying. They usually be.
Checking in on Facebook. I like this point. He says, funny how they only speak out against road cops after they retire and secure their pension, never while on the job when it would matter. No balls. That's a great point. That is definitely the comment of the night right there. If I had an award for comments, Bo definitely would get this comment tonight. That is fact right there. Super fact. And thanks for checking in on Facebook. Appreciate you. All right, back to the interview. Here we go.
Or I think that was like super common was like driving the wrong way. So somebody would be drunk and they'd be in the left lane on the wrong side of the highway driving 65 miles an hour. Super dangerous because you're just gonna get out. And if it's 2:00 in the morning, there's not that many cars on the road. You're gonna have a head-on collision. It's gonna be fucking terrible. So there's like a lot of different guys that had. I think like 2 or 3 I've heard where they had a wrong way driver and they like interceded and like ended up like either T-boning them or something like that because to get them off the road, and they've gotten pretty badly injured because of that. But like they don't talk about how frequently guys would get hit. Like I've had at least 4 or 5, maybe more classmates that got into really serious car crashes, like just doing details or something like that. We just had a trooper that was recently killed on a detail.
Construction detail?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't remember all the details. I bet I was out. I was retired at that point. So I didn't really talk to many people about it and really jump on that train. But
now, do you think that's all based on distracted driving?
Drinking and drive, yeah. Like I think, one of the things too is like depending on the weather conditions. So if it's like raining out, one of the things that happens is like especially at night, you like when you think like a moth to a light, like your lights on the back. So they've changed how the lights on the cruisers interact so that they're not too bright because they found that people will get drawn into them. And so if you're drinking and driving and you see these lights, you just naturally you're like trying like they taught us this. It's interesting because like some of the things I teach the guys I work with now on being focused. So like if you focus on something, you're probably going to hit it. So they would teach us in the academy and driver training. If you focus on the telephone pole, you're going to hit it. If you focus on the road, you're probably going to stay on the road. Same thing is if you focus on the lights, you're probably going to go and drive towards it, especially if you're drinking and driving. It's happened so many times. That's where somebody's drinking and driving to see the lights, they want to avoid them and they fucking crash into the car. It happens all the time.
That's
very
crazy.
Yeah.
interesting.
Like the amount of times I've been almost killed on
Fuck.
a detail where I don't know, like 5-10 times. Like there was one, my most recent one was like this guy was in a tractor trailer truck, didn't see my lights, and nearly like you get hit by a TT unit. Forget about it. You're, like those are so heavy that it's like literally a train. It's not the same. Like it doesn't matter what kind of car you are, you get hit by a tractor trailer truck, fucking gone. And he like it was so close, and I ended up pulling him over and like ripping him into him. Like, do you not fucking see me? Like, what the hell's going on here? And but like, yeah, like that, like, I mean, I'm sure every guy that's not like, because being a local officer, you don't have the highway, so the speed is different. So it's like doing traffic. It's not dangerous. It's just a completely different scenario. And like you're on the highway and you're in the middle of the night, people just
Going 80, 90,
they get
100.
close, and you can get that pucker factor. Like it's scary.
Do tractor trailers get pulled over for speeding?
Yeah.
Is that more of a rare thing?
I mean, every now and then you got a fucking crazy ass guy that's just like driving like an asshole. But like, no, they have much higher standards. So like they have DOT standards and stuff like that. So they have, they have to have a Class A. They have to have a medical card. They have to they have a zero. Like you can't. As far as so like with drinking and driving, like you have a point of weight. So like you can have a certain amount of alcohol inside of your system. If you have a Class A license, it's way lower than that. It's like 0.02 or something like that. It's like you can't. And so like the standards for these guys are much higher. But then it's a pretty well-paying job for a skill that if you go and get your license and stuff like that, that you got these like kind of like they're kind of idiots.
Have you caught a lot of truck drivers drunk driving? Like
me,
tractor
no.
trailers?
I didn't pull a lot of tractor trailers over. I didn't spend that much time on the highway with a lot of tractor trailers. I was on the pike in the beginning part of my career when it was still the E-Troop before they dismantled it and changed it because they had the big overtime scandal. And I spent a little bit of time on the highway, but most of my time was in these communities where I did Athol and Belchertown, and so we didn't have a lot of highway.
It's way out.
I was only really like when I was working details, and I wasn't pulling cars over when I was working a detail. I was just sitting there.
When everyone's going, say 20
those towns for my people that are not from Massachusetts, that towns he just listed, that's like way out Western Mass, way out in the boonies.
30 miles an hour over the speed limit. How do you even decide who you're going to pull over, or do you just don't in that position?
Like when I was doing LiDAR and stuff like that, it was just like you use a laser to track their speed. I would always, you had to pretty much be doing like 20 over the speed limit, but like you can like if you can totally like estimate how fast somebody's going when you start to see how fast cars move, and you start to see what speeds, like when you connect the actual number to how fast the car is going. So you can kind of tell based upon how fast they're going over a period of time. But like at 20-30 miles an hour, I mean, not, but like when you're like, if a car is flying by other cars, it's super easy to pick it out. But it's, yeah. I mean, I didn't get really caught up in like the traffic stuff. It wasn't my jam.
Now, when you're on a construction job, what are you doing in the car the whole night? Is it you guys
Netflix,
like watching movies?
Phone calls.
Now, is that something you're allowed to do, or is there really nothing else to do?
It depends. Like I think it depends on the environment. Like, some jobs you had to be required to be outside your car and directing traffic. Depend on the troop, depend on the barracks. But like you're just sitting there most of the time, especially on an overnight job, you're just chilling.
So it's really just there as a presence with the lights to be that blockade.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense why they do it, especially on the highways, because one, people just drive differently when they see a cop. The second thing was that if something happened, there was somebody on scene that had a radio that was able to respond to it immediately. And like, and a lot of the other jobs, like setting up the actual traffic details was like, that was the most dangerous part. And to do that without cops would be really difficult. Like I know some other states do it, but they have like the crash trucks and stuff like that, and those are super helpful. But people just drive differently. Like they see the state troopers and they
slow down.
They just drive different. Like it's just people's behavior is just different when they see a cop.
Now, when you're off duty as a state trooper, you were saying earlier that you pulled someone over off duty. Was that common?
I don't know if there was one time I saw this guy flying, doing like 100 miles an hour. And I ended up grabbing his plate and writing him a ticket and sending him a mail. But that wasn't really that common because like pulling people over when you're off, like you could like, it's changed. Like it's scrutinized more. But like technically if you're a state trooper in Massachusetts, you had authority. Didn't matter if you're on duty, off duty. You could effectively enforce laws at any time.
What about when you're in a town? I feel like it's a misconception. People think, oh, they see a state trooper and you're in a city, they can't do anything.
No,
Not
you
Mass.
can.
Mass, we have jurisdiction everywhere. It depends on
Oh,
the
yeah.
state. So jurisdictions, like in Florida, things are different. Like they have county, they have local, they have state, and some
Sheriff.
agencies, some states are highway patrol. That's all they do is the highway. In some states, the state covers the entire state. In Mass, we had besides the environmental police had the most jurisdiction in Massachusetts. Actually, they had jurisdiction in the entire state. The state police had the second most jurisdiction in the state. So like, it didn't matter where we were, but you couldn't. Sometimes it would happen like a local officer would pull somebody over on the highway, but that was not like their jurisdiction.
Coop, I don't know. I really don't know. In Massachusetts they can. They have anytime. Yeah, anytime in Massachusetts they can pull you over and write a ticket. Yeah, I don't know if he lives in Florida now. All right, here we go.
They could cross over into certain towns if they had mutual aid, or if they had an agreement with that town, or if they were in pursuit or something like that. But for the most part, you had to stay inside of your jurisdiction. You couldn't be like in another community and be like, hey, that guy's doing something, I'm going to go pull him over. Well, the state, we didn't matter where we were.
How long were you on the job for before you got into investigations?
I was like 2 years.
Is that quick or?
It was pretty quick. It was for me, it was good timing. I was going through a lot of I was going through a divorce and a lot of personal issues that like really kind of fucked everything up. And I needed the schedule. So I started applying to different units to try to get on, because like I was going through custody issues with my kids. And I like, if I was going to be on midnights, it was gonna be really hard to spend time with my kids. And so I ended up applying, and because I had the paramedic piece and there was not that many people that applied to this particular unit at that particular time, I got really fortunate to be able to get on it within 2 years. Because usually at that time they were like, yeah, it's going to take you 5 to 7 years to get into a unit. And that was, now it's different. Like I think guys get on pretty quickly. There's been a lot of turnover. And so like when since I was on, like there was like, I don't know, 12 classes that came through or something like that, or 10 classes. There's a lot of classes. Like we got seniority pretty quick. Cause before that it was like, they'd only done like 3 classes in the last 10 years. And so some guys were waiting a really long time to either transfer to a different barracks or get into a different unit. And when I came on, it was like they started to move people around a lot. And so I got really fortunate to get on pretty early in my career.
What's the training look like for a specialty unit?
Depends on the unit. Like,
so in your case,
they didn't really, it was kind of like they paired you up with a trooper that was experienced and senior and like trial by fire. Like it was just kind of like you kind of learned it.
There you have it. There you have it. What was the training like? It's fucking basically non-existent. Look at that. Just pair you up with a veteran trooper and hey, pass or fail, right?
As you went, and like we had opportunities to go to different trainings. Like one of my first trainings was like I did a homicide.
I'm telling you, a lot of this shit inside these departments, and you know, I heard this a lot from the former trooper that I interviewed. You know, a lot of this shit is just ego and who you know, and that's what pushes you through. You know, classic example. Watch the what's the movie there with Training Day. You know, when you start to see what happens behind the scenes with the LAPD, it's all about who you know. You know, how they push each other through and how they continue to just do dirty things to get themselves up the ladder and increase their salaries. You know, it does happen. It really does happen.
Investigator school was like a week long in New Jersey. That was pretty neat. But there was no like, I think they changed things a little bit where there's more training for guys that are coming, especially because we had because every unit covered a county. And so we had like 15 troopers in our unit, but like there was like multiple units across the whole state. There was around 300 to 400 troopers that were doing like DA investigations, more major crime investigations. So there was a lot of us. It was like the second biggest. There was like the road and then our field services. And then you had the DA, like the investigative services. And then you had smaller units with pockets. So like the stop team, which is our SWAT team, they had, it was only like a handful of guys, maybe 50 at most. I'm not quite sure about the numbers, but they would be these smaller pockets of units that were more difficult to get on, like the air wings. So they could be guys that are helicopter pilots and stuff. There's only a handful of those guys. So it was one of the bigger units, but they didn't really have any standardized training of like,
it's quiet.
This is how you, like they had like a checklist or something like that, but there was nothing. Yeah, it was more like experience based.
And what exactly was your role?
Go.
So I was we didn't change like we didn't have detective titles. Like the only detective title would be like a detective lieutenant, but that was like a promotion where it was more of a, it was used kind of weird. So we still had the same title as trooper. Our pay stayed the same, but we were just investigators. So like we would go in plain clothes, unmarked car. That was a Monday through Friday. We'd be on call a couple nights a week, a couple nights a month, and yeah, like we kind of handled anything that was pretty like all homicides we handled, all suspicious deaths we handled. We handled a lot of major sexual assaults, bank robberies, stuff like that. Pretty much anything pretty major, unless like a local agency was they're pretty competent. They had like their own detective bureau. We would handle pretty much everything.
Do you remember your first case?
Yeah. I remember my first homicide was it was it was a pretty sad one. It was pretty local. So like it was only like a town over or something like that. And it was a murder suicide. So it was like it was a domestic thing. She was going to leave him for some other guy. And he's like, "You're not leaving." So he ended up shooting her and then killing himself in this small little apartment. And their kids were just in the next room. And, you know, they come on scene. They're both butt ass naked. And these two little girls had to climb over the deceased parent's body to go get help. And, you know, it was like, for me, it was, I'd seen a lot of, like, I'd seen a ton of shit in the hospital. You know, I'd seen shootings before. I worked at Boston MS. I saw like, I had like one of my first patients who deceased from a shooting out in Roxbury. It was like, so I'd seen a bunch of stuff, but that was just like the kids involved and stuff like that was like, it was just so dark. Like you could feel the darkness inside of the apartment. And, you know, not much to do with that because it wasn't like we were looking for somebody. It was like kind of open and shut. But, you know, I just remember like, man, these fucking kids are, you know, they're gonna, like, how do you
trauma for the rest of their life?
Get imprinted on you at like 5 and 8 or however old they were. And the parents are now gone. They got to either go into foster care or they're going to have to find family for them. And like, that's the last memory you have of your parents. Like it's not like it just happened. You get notified, like you fucking saw it. And it's just like, wow, this is dark shit.
What are you doing when you get on a scene like that?
That particular scene, so like when we showed up, everything was pretty much like blocked off. Like local guys or other guys in the barracks, they already have like the scene pretty much secured. And, you know, you're being mindful of where you're putting your feet, what you're touching. You know, you're just kind of keeping your eyes open for like things that you can find that are going to connect the dots. So like blood trails or casings or paperwork or who, like you're identifying, like who are these people? And then you're, you know, canvassing, you're asking neighbors, hey, did you hear anything? Did you see anything? And you're pulling out interviews and you know, we had one case.
It actually did investigative work on like things that we heard in the Karen Reed case. They actually, did you hear them? They cordoned off the area. They would actually go in and ask questions of witnesses in and around. Did you hear anything? Did you see anything? Look at this investigative work. Who would have thought
that? You know, I think we had like 10 guys working it, and it was like I think we did over 100 interviews. So you're just like, you're trying to pull as much information as possible, preserve the scene, and then you have crime scene come in, and then they do their processing, their fingerprints, they do photos, they do stuff like that.
Wow!
And you're just trying to pull out because like once the medical examiner comes and they secure the body, like this for the most part the scene's starting to get wrapped up, and once that scene is wrapped up, the body's gone and everything's cleaned up. Like you can't go back in time, so you have to pull as much information as possible, and especially when it came to homicides. It was like you had to pull everything because God forbid something came up 10 years down the road and it questioned whatever the investigators had found at that time. Like there's no statutory limitation on homicides. And so like you had to keep all of that information. So it was like, it was very systematic of like kind of going through the motions, making sure you're securing everything, covering all your bases.
How long could a body stay on scene for?
Depend. So like, you know, it could be a full day. It depended on like what, typically like if it was just an unattended death and there's no suspicion to it, like it'd be a couple hours or something like that. But if it was a homicide, you slowed everything down. So like very different than traditional law enforcement where you're responding and reacting very quickly. In investigations, you slow everything down. So you want to, it's like slow and steady. Like you don't want to rush anything. So we would slow the whole scene down. It would be secured, write a search warrant, wait. And sometimes that would take, 12, 24 hours, something like that. And so it could be a day.
Now, what's your quickest turnaround time, I guess you would say, to solve a case? And how many go unsolved?
For the most part, they're solved pretty quickly. Like they would be like, you pretty much knew who did it. Like it
It's
would
like the
be
first
some
48,
witness, or you kind of, there was some connection to it. Most of the stuff we handled, like we didn't have like a big city in our we covered 2 counties. So most of our stuff was like domestic stuff. It was weird. Like we had weird cases. It wasn't drug cases. It wasn't like gang wars and stuff like that. It was like sometimes it'd be a girlfriend killed a boyfriend, or sometimes it'd be like boyfriend killed, like something like that, or a parent. Like we've had cases where kids were killing their elderly parents and stuff like that. But what was the question again, Ian? Was
About how long it takes to solve it.
So like,
and how many go unsolved.
Yes. So we had a pretty high close rate for the state. So I would say it was like around 80% or something like that, which is pretty, but we had a lot of resources. So we had like multiple people working. As like, you go to Chicago or a bigger city or something like that, they probably don't have as many people with the number of homicides that they're getting. Like they have to move on quickly because a new one comes in. So we didn't have so many cases come in that we weren't able to like start to put the pieces together. And so we had a pretty like solid solve rate. And usually like, I think the longest was like maybe a week. We had like maybe 1 or 2 unsolved that were pretty recent. Like we had cold cases from like one case that we like exhumed a body in the 70s and like had to do DNA and like putting all the pieces together. And it's like nearly a 50-year-old case. So we did like really interesting things from time to time with cold cases and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was pretty quick. Like sometimes it would be like they would already be apprehended before we even got on scene. Like the local guys would get them or something like that. So it kind of depended.
Now you're staying with the case the whole way. It doesn't get, say, assigned to someone else unless maybe like the feds pick it up.
Depends. So like in the initial part, like when it came to a homicide, all of us, like not all of us, but most of us would show up because we just didn't get that many. In my unit, we only got like 2-3 a year potentially. We were doing like a lot of suicides, overdoses, and like there was a lot more that we did. But as far as homicides, like we didn't get too many. And so like initially it was just, we had a bunch of us show up on scene, and then it's eventually would get signed to one case officer, and then they would run with it unless it got reassigned. So yeah, for the most part, like at first it was like more of a team effort, and then it would get assigned to one person so that they had one point of contact, so it didn't get too confusing who's doing what. So they had to go through the checklist of things.
What do you think was a common factor among some of these homicide cases?
Human behavior, man. I don't know. It was a lot of domestic stuff. So it's just like things happened fast for people. All of a sudden they're upset and they're angry, and all of a sudden they killed somebody. So it was like, I see the world in 2 different spaces, like the evolved version of humans, which is what we would call like emotionally regulated. People understand themselves, they're detached from other people's poor behavior. And then we have the primal side of human nature. So when people are threatened by their own safety, and however their perception of what that looks like, typically their childhood brought that into them. So they were imprinted when they were younger by what they experienced. They continue to live out those patterns. And so they live from this place.
Guy's fucking smart, I can tell you that. He's not dumb. He's pretty fucking smart. He knows psychology. He's really good at psychology, and that's probably a lot to do with his medical training too, and spending time at the hospital. But this guy's not fucking dumb. He is smart. All right, I want to just thank everybody. A lot of people coming and going tonight. Appreciate you all being in here and staying through this. Got probably about another 15 or 20 minutes. We'll wrap this one up. And thank you so much for being here and supporting my channel. I really do appreciate it. All right, let's keep going on here. Wrap this one up here in a little bit.
Of survival and survival instinctual places, like death is pretty common. And so people just,
BRB.
They say a lot of things, but then they do a lot of things. So they, especially inside of like those domestic relationship aspects, it gets so complicated because people's emotions are elevated and triggered at such a higher level. And so like they'll do things that they would not expect to be, like people wouldn't expect them to do it because like it just happened so fast. So I think obviously stuff built up to that point. Like there's certain signals or pieces of evidence, like or behaviors that are showing up beforehand, but most people would never call that out because they don't want to be like, when it comes to like suicide and stuff like that. A lot of guys will be like, oh, and you know what, like shit, like I should have known better. But nobody wants to be that uncomfortable to call that out and to be honest about like, hey, I see this is going on. And so in those environments, nobody's really saying anything when they should be saying something because they don't know, because they're too scared to, because they don't want to ruin the relationship or whatever it is. And so it's like a compounding effect. And then all of a sudden everybody comes out like, oh, yeah, I predicted that. You predicted it. Interesting. Did you say anything? Like, you didn't say shit. And so like, I think it's human behavior. Like when we go into the survival mechanisms, like people make up weird fucking stories about what they perceive, and their realities get distorted. And like, I think most people don't realize how in control of their life they are because of how they perceive their reality, that things show up for them. I mean, this is my own, for me, like I had a certain perception of life, and I started making decisions because like I'm doing homicide investigations. I also have a lot of personal shit going on, where I'm doing like, I have like this divorce going on, and like I get into a very chaotic, toxic relationship after that. And I'm like seeing all this play out in my own life. And then also I'm seeing it play out in my professional life with other people.
Right.
And
Like no
people,
reprieve.
We don't know what's going on for people. Like we don't
Yeah,
know.
and thank you, Sue. I appreciate that. And look, I want to try to find a contact for this guy. I want to hear more about the academy. I think they could have done a longer section on that, but this is a great interview. And again, the best interviews are what? When the host can just shut the fuck up and listen to the guest. And I really want to reach out to this guy and interview him and hear more about the academy. His name is Tony Bova, B-O-V-A, former Mass State Police trooper. It's a great interview, and just doesn't look like there's a lot of cuts, which is cool. Looks like he just kind of just sat down and spilt his guts, and here we go. But we're gonna wrap this one up pretty soon here, about another 15 minutes or so. And thanks for being here. Appreciate your support, and I hope everybody has an amazing 4th of July. If I don't get to talk to you, obviously it's the 250th year of America. We will celebrate and celebrate loud. I'm sure it's going to be very loud. I do too. He is very self-aware. He's very smart. It's not a dumb guy. No psychology. Knows his shit. I think he just walks in my opinion, I think he just kind of walks the line a little bit here of some of the shit that should be said. And he is, in my opinion, just protecting a little bit more, maybe that's just the nature of the troopers, how they are, the brother's brother. All right, here we go.
What stories they're telling themselves in their head to be able to justify why they arrived here. Like I don't think most of these people are making these decisions because they think they're bad human beings. I don't think most people think they're bad humans. I think they have to have some kind of justification for why they do what they do. Because if they were bad, they'd probably kill themselves. They'd probably be depressed. They probably wouldn't be able to continue. So they have these survival mechanisms that they utilize to exonerate themselves from poor behavior. Because then they'll blame everything else.
Tougher than the military.
When you have these types of scenes or cases, does it become obsessive a little bit, thinking about why they did something or why they did something specifically, or why they didn't, or why this played out this way, or why this happened to this person and not someone else? Does it haunt you in a way? Because I know me, like I'll be on social media, you see a case about something and you do a deep dive and you just start, Googling everything, going down a rabbit hole. And people, you see that in true crime cases, people just obsess over it. So what's it like as like the investigator?
I'm gonna be really honest with you. I'm not typical when it comes to the detective side of things, because I just didn't attach to these things like so personally. So for me, it was like a very different experience because I had this like the job was not the thing that I was experiencing that was the most difficult for me. I had my own shit going on, and so it was easy for me to detach from what was going on because it wasn't my experience and I didn't have a lot of control over it. So I would be very diligent in wanting to do a very like professional job and wanting to like make sure that we're getting the proper justice. And I would go through the motions. I had one case where I'm on call and I get a call in the middle of the night, and the desk lieutenant at the time was like, "Hey, we're getting a report that this woman was kidnapped. Like, I'm not really sure if it's legitimate or not, but like I want to pass off the information."
I don't know. Maybe that's something I'll reach out to him and ask him. I'll send him the video and go, "Hey, do you know this guy? What are my plans for the 4th? I have to work. I do have to work. But I think I have the night off, and I'll probably try to go around and find some fireworks, watch some fireworks, most likely. How about you? What's your plans for the 4th? But no, that's a good question, and I'm going to ask Todd if he does know this guy. Maybe he has a contact for him. and get him on the show. I'd like to talk to him more about the academy. All right, here we go.
So I call one of the local, it was a trooper, and they taken this report from this guy that was really intoxicated, saying he witnessed this woman in this like hillbilly town get kidnapped. Like he was coming out of the bar, she got thrown into the back of the truck in a bag and all this stuff, and I'm like, fuck, like I in my head I was like, this is bullshit. Like this is like the way it's sounding. But I'm like, I have to, like, the 2% chance that it's actual, I have to make sure I go to this, and we have to do a thorough investigation. And it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm exhausted, and end up showing up. I got a bunch of local guys, a bunch of troopers. I have it's like running like eight guys, looking, like pulling video, doing interviews, like trying to find any remnants of like this woman being kidnapped. We find nothing, and we like interviewed this guy a bunch of different times. And so like there was a due diligence that was required in order to make sure that we were professional. But for me, I fortunately just didn't get attached to these things in a way where I brought it home. Like when I was off, and
he's lucky
I
didn't
didn't really like ruminate on it. Like it just wasn't. I always felt like it was a kind of a gift, because I didn't have this like black, like at that point I had started to break up this black and white thinking, and I wasn't stuck on like most people, they'll perceive things through a black and white narrative to feel safe. And so I didn't have that. I could kind of see both sides of things pretty easily. So I didn't get stuck on bringing that home, or being like, this bothered me, or like the only time something bothered me was like when I was at a fire investigation, seeing one of my buddies that was a trooper, a car chase breaks out pretty close to us. And then I hear like shots fired on the radio, and we race to the scene. So we're at a fatal fire investigating it. We race to the scene, and my buddy is there, stabbed from this guy from the car chase, and the kid got shot by another local officer. And I'm jumping in the ambulance. I have my paramedic training. I'm jumping in the ambulance, and I'm like holding pressure on him, and like watching this all in focus of somebody I knew, and getting him to, a med flight to get to the hospital. And thank God he made it. But it was like, that was like one of those moments where like fucking really hit. But other than that, like it wasn't personal. It was like, I couldn't bring that home, because then it was going to affect my kids and stuff like that. I was dealing more with other shit. It was like, that was never, and it's like, I've talked to a lot of guys that were, special forces overseas and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff that Sabrina and I are doing now is more working with like the mental health side for men, and relationships and stuff like that. And so like some of these guys I've talked to that were overseas doing special forces is like, yeah, it was always the stuff that happened to me when I was younger. It was always the stuff that was happening at home. Personally, it was like, I could detach from like having to go through that shit, because it was easy. It was black and white. And so like the job was more black and white for me. It's like, I'm not in control of this. I'm not going to bring this home. The stuff I was in control of was like the stuff at home that was not going well, and having to figure that out. So I was more focused on that.
So on that note, what about the opposite? How do you not bring your home life into your career and let it affect you, from staying focused on the job?
That was more difficult for me. I think there was moments where I was overwhelmed with what was going on at home, where I remember like early on, I had like 9 cases, and I didn't have, like, we were just so busy
Really good
with these cases. And I went to my sergeant and was like, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I'm brand new. I don't really know what to do with some of this stuff and this and that. And he's like, tough shit. I guess you have to figure it out. I was like, so, I mean,
That support system, right? From his fucking superior officer. I got some shit going on. Well, yeah, fuck it. You're going to get over it. Oh, man. You imagine that?
At some level, it was just, I had to do what I had to do to show up, just to make sure that didn't fall apart. But there was like many points where I almost did. Like, that was probably the biggest threat for me, was home life seeping into my work life. And there was many times that it almost crossed over, where, it was, it was like, that was embarrassing. It was like, it was pretty close to home. And, that was more me doing my own internal personal development work. Like, that was me having to figure out why I'd arrived. Cause like, for me, it was, we just talked about, like, I spent 10 years trying to get this job. I get this job, and I'm like on top of the world. Like, I spent 10 years getting this. I worked so hard to get here. I fucking graduated, and I get this fucking cruiser, and I'm like a fucking state trooper with like the uniform and the fucking boots and all this.
There's the ego. So we talked about the ego. There it is. See, he's pumping himself up. The boots, the trooper, the badge,
stuff. I look like I'm invading Poland. Like it was like I was at this like level of like, wow. Because like for me, it was like I'd spent so long trying to get, it wasn't just like all of a sudden 19, 20, get the job. Like, no, I worked fucking really hard to get to where I was. And then a year later, I'm like, this sucks. Like, this is not
a year.
Like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be like. And then I started making fucking really poor, like I ended up leaving my ex-wife and started another relationship, and everything started to fall apart. And, that was what I was dealing with mostly through the first couple of years of my career, where that seeped in ways that, because like it was, I think in my mind, I was like, I'm a state trooper. I can, like, guys do fucked up shit all the time. Like I had this weird thing that was going on inside of my head, like not what I have now. And it led me to make these decisions that brought me down this path that like, just, I had to like, at one point, like sitting in my car, I was going to take my own life. Like it was like, got so bad. And having to pull myself out through that to be able to figure out why this stuff was showing up in my life, and brought me to that point after I'd worked so hard. I was like a good fucking kid throughout, like struggled, but I was a good kid, like follow the rules, all these things. And then all of a sudden I'm like, this isn't me. Like what's going on? And then that unraveling and not realizing, like, that was like, as much as it got so close, like sitting in my car, I was going to take my own life. Like it was like, got so bad. And having to pull myself out through that to be able to figure out why this stuff was showing up in my life, and brought me to that point after I'd worked so hard. I was like a good fucking kid throughout, like struggled, but I was a good kid, like follow the rules, all these things. And then all of a sudden I'm like, this isn't me. Like what's going on? And then that unraveling,
I agree,
and not
Karen.
realizing, like, that was like, as much as it got so close, it was the best thing that ever happened, because I had to fucking completely rebuild myself from the ground up. And that was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life, was like going through that. There's like 2 years where I was like in this dark place. And I just started that job in the unit. And it was just, I just had to figure it out. Like that was kind of it.
How did you overcome it?
Well, it's funny because, most of my life up until that point, I was taking I was doing background investigations. I want to be a cop. So I like stayed away from mental health, because I didn't, on these background investigations, they would ask you, have you seen a therapist? Have you been diagnosed with anything? Blah, 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 blah. So I was like, I don't want to touch that. So I'm fucking not doing therapy. I'm staying away from that. I'll talk with my mentors at the church or whoever. And so I stayed away from all that shit. And then I left my ex-wife and immediately jumped into therapy. And I, between personal therapists and couples therapy, I think probably in like 9 or 10 different therapists. And then there was, and that's over like a 5-6 year window. But I went to a Tony Robbins event in 2018. This was like when everything was like really hitting. And it was the first time I was like, oh, I've been a victim my whole fucking life. Like this, I was a victim. And it was the first time I was like, oh, I can actually have free will and choice, because I'd been living up to that point was the Bible saying I'm predestined, I'm a sinner, and therefore I'm bad, and there's nothing I can do, and I need to be saved. And then I go to this event, and everything, all this stuff is happening. Why is all this showing up? And then I go to this event, I'm like, and I started to see differently. And it took years of like seeing differently for me to reprogram myself. And then it was like all of my growth was like done through relationships, like having the bad relationships reveal something about myself that I was continuing to allow in my life. And it was like this good boy, like wanted to make sure, like people pleasing attitude, which I didn't realize really deteriorated my marriage when I was younger. I didn't have the awareness.
I think he does stuff and works with troopers, mental health, I think, Karen. I want to touch on this for a minute, and I think this is a great section of where he's going with this. I got into mental health now it's been 2 years or 2.5 years ago. I encourage people to do it. I myself, and this is kind of where I connect with this, was in a relationship at the time, and her and I ended it. And when it ended, I immediately got into therapy. And like him, I started to notice things about myself because of the deterioration of that relationship. And I have an amazing mental health counselor and coach and life coach, and completely allows me to look at life differently. Just kind of reprogrammed my head where, I used to be really hot-headed in situations, and now I see things a lot more clearly, and I let things kind of roll off my shoulders a lot more, where it would be something that I would fixate on or have to snap back at. And now I'm able to look at a situation and see the results or the consequences of that situation. And I urge everybody to get into mental health, and find a good therapist. And it's not going to be the first person right away. You're going to have to find someone, but find someone that works for you. And my therapist he went into monkhood for like 8 years. So he lived off the grid. And I am not embarrassed to talk about any of this, because I urge everybody to get into mental health. It makes you such a better, clearer person. My life has changed so much in 2 years. And I look in the mirror and just look at myself of how much developing growth I've gone through. And I've been through really traumatic shit in my life, like just really traumatic shit. My best friend was murdered. My brother committed suicide, amongst other crazy family shit that happened. And the good thing is like, we don't look back. We just look forward. In my sessions, we don't worry about the past. The past is the past. Now you have to change the future. And it's really good. And I'm not embarrassed to talk about it. And I urge everybody to. There's always someone out there that can help you. 100%. There really is. And I am thankful that this person came into my life and has been, my mentor, and someone that has guided me. And just listen. And it's good to have someone listen, that you don't pour your shit onto your friends and your family. You just pay someone and pour all your shit onto them. But it's nice to have an outside perspective versus friends and family, and just hear it from someone else that's not connected to you in that way. And they just give you the straight truth in how they see it. And it's been good. It's been very good. All right, here we go. Let's finish this one up.
Didn't have the evolution of like what I had seen, and that just kept showing up like a pattern time and time again. And then I got a couple of coaches and started learning things about masculine and feminine dynamics, started learning things about like subconscious and nervous system. And then went through like a really, really harsh breakup. And then everything snapped. I quit drinking. I lost 60 pounds. I got ripped. I was journaling. I was doing yoga. I was like really started to take care of myself. And that was 3-4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a process. And
it's true.
And then
it's true. It did not, this didn't work out with someone that I wish it would have worked out, but I think that we just met at different stages of our life. I wish her nothing but the best. I don't have a bad thing to say about her at all. She's a fucking pretty amazing person. But it took that situation, and she looked at me and said, maybe you need to get into therapy. And I was like, it's not a bad fucking idea. The next day after we broke up, I called a counseling center and got into therapy. And here I am. And I can say I'm extremely proud where I'm at in my life right now. Therapy does fucking wonders. All right, here we go.
Like once I started doing that, the job was like easy. It was like, it was, I started getting my shit together, and then I wasn't attached to things that were happening at work, and my home life was starting to like actually become like peaceful. It was like things were, because it was showing up for me like as a pattern. Like I didn't realize how much I had created it. I didn't realize how much my focus on becoming a trooper was the thing. Like that was actually, I thought that was gonna be the thing that fulfilled me. I was married, had kids, and I was finally got my dream job, and I reached the top of the mountain, and there was nothing left after it. I was like, shit, because all the stuff I was looking for externally, and I didn't realize how much I was looking for me internally. Like who am I?
Yeah.
And that's been the journey over like the last 8-9 years or 5, like really like the last like 4 or 5 years. I've really started to understand myself.
Was the job what you expected it to be?
No, it was a lot. Actually, it was, it's funny because like working at the hospital, it was like a lot more chaos, a lot more fights, a lot more like, disruptive people. Like I didn't really get into that many fights as a trooper. Like it wasn't really as exhilarating as I thought. Like the investigation part, I really, really liked that. That was very interesting, but my life was falling apart at that point. So I didn't fully enjoy the beginning stages of that as much as I would have. So it was definitely, I don't think if it was as fulfilling or what I thought it was going to be, I would have made probably different decisions. But yeah, it was definitely nothing, because I'd already been in different areas of it. Like when I was a police cadet at UMass, it was the best. I had a partner. It was like fun. It was exciting. We would chat. When you're a trooper, like they're very different than the local guys. The local guys that have better camaraderie. When you like, because they would go after work, go to the bar, hang out or something like that. As a trooper, you have your cruiser, so you're typically traveling in the first couple of years of your career, like far away from where you live, and you have your car. Like you're not going to the bar after you get out of the barracks. You're going home, and so like there wasn't a lot of as much camaraderie as I thought we were going to have. And it was pretty lonely, and like one thing I didn't really like to be alone. I liked connecting with people. That's why I wanted to be a city cop. I wanted to be around people, and so being so removed, it felt boring.
How long did you end up staying on the force for?
I was like a week shy of 10 years. It was technically 10 years if it was a week shy of me graduating the academy. So it was about 10 years.
And you left because of an injury?
Yeah. Yeah. I got injured at it was like a training exercise doing defensive tactics. Ended up popping one of my toes and broke it and had surgery, and I have 3 pins and it still fucking throbs every day. So it's like I didn't realize how significant foot surgery was going to be, like how much my foot was going to swell, how like significant the whole process was going to be, because I ended up taking like a couple different pieces of my bone out and reconstructing and stuff like that.
How did leaving make you feel?
Relieved. I felt like, I think it was a blessing. I don't think I have like a typical, like I retired, now I'm losing something that I felt like was my identity. I didn't like the way that the culture and the job was going was, I wasn't going to jive with it anymore. My mindset was different. I was like changing into a different person. I was like it wasn't going to resonate with me anymore. So I actually felt a lot of relief, because it felt like there was a lot of pressure to kind of fall into line on what they expected, which was shut your mouth, just follow what you say, do as you're told, not as we do. Like it was like I was getting to that point where I'm like, I can't fucking do this anymore. And so like it was just like this blessing where I'm like, okay, this works.
Where are you at today?
Right now, me and my girl Sabrina, we're doing men's coaching, like high performance coaching for relationships and stuff like that. So guys that don't feel respected at home, manipulation, rejections, like all this stuff I experienced throughout my career inside of relationships, we're now helping them master that, how to have that epic relationship with not like fucking Andrew Tate fucking masculinity, and also not like this like ultra soft, weak therapized, feminized like man. And so like, what does that actually look like to be masculine? Be emotionally grounded, and to create a relationship that's like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, relationships have to look like that. Like how the one you want to create, like how do you want to live? Like, this is the person that you're gonna be next to the most. And how do you have an epic relationship with her that you don't feel like you're losing yourself in the process, so that you can hold standards, but also connect and like love at a very deep level, have better sex and better conversations and all these things that like, especially high performing guys, what I found was like their minds work so much faster. They're so focused. They want to achieve a lot of things, and they are very good at certain things. But inside the relationship piece, like they suck at it, because they don't really they don't know what makes her feel seen, heard, understood, and how to operate in that with her emotions and her biology, and how she changes with how, how if he says no to her, if he says no and then she gets upset and he doesn't know what to do with that, like what does that look like from a practical standpoint, not just like theory and books and stuff like that? Because that's what I fucking lived. Like I was like fucking failure after failure after, like my life was just struggle and suffering and failure. And finally at the point now where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm like fucking figuring this out. I kind of know who the fuck I am. And, feeling like I'm grounded and solid and centered. And there's not like, at this point I'm winning. Like there's no failing coming any longer. Like failure to me is now a lesson. Now I got to shift. And so Sabrina and I have been running Respect Gains, which has been fun. And, guys are making insane changes after either breakups or relationship breakdowns or any of those number of things.
What do you think is the most important lesson you've come to learn that you wish you knew when you were, say, a teenager?
Yeah, that would be, don't give up, like stay determined. Like what you're looking for is not that far away. And if you continue to move towards it, you'll achieve it. And so like, I think I spent most of my life thinking I was going to fail and not ever really failing, even going through insane things. So that like, if you set your mind to something and you're focused on it, like you can achieve it. Like, I don't care who the fuck.
Fucking 100%. Fucking 100%. I had someone give me this plaque. It still have it. It says dream. If you dream it, you can do it. It's a statement from Walt Disney. And it says here, you are, what the hell did you write on here? You are never too old to make dreams come true. As a work friend of mine gave it to me in 2010 and I still have it. 16 years later, I still have this on my desk. I fucking look at it all the time. Right there. If you dream it, you can do it. 100%. And here we are, you know, on a YouTube channel, hanging out here a couple nights before the 4th of July. You know, who would have known that LTL Media would have got this far along? And hopefully it, you know, keeps going. We want it to keep going. All right, let's round this one out. A couple more seconds here, and then we're going to button this up.
Fuck you are. I'm fucking ADHD, dyslexic, fucking kid, fucking did homicide investigations. You can achieve anything in life with the right mindset, the right people, 100%. The right, you know, the right environment. Life is actually not as complicated as we think it is. It's actually pretty simple. And it takes a lot of complication to get to the point where you're like, oh, this is simple. I get it now. But there's not that many people that figure that out.
Well, Tony, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today.
100%.
Yeah. And I wish you the best with your new business and everything in the future.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
That's a badass interview. That was a badass interview. And I want to get that guy on my show. So we're going to find out if we can reach out to Tony Bova, former Massachusetts State Police, here on talking about, you know, what it was like being a state trooper for 10 years, deep in the thick of it. All right, everybody, I am going to head out. I appreciate all the support tonight. If you haven't supported or subscribed to my channel, please do. Comment after the show. Let me know what you thought about this interview. I thought it was a superior interview. I love the openness. I love the vulnerable ability of it. Was not afraid to go into sections. I want to hear more about the Academy. If I ever get him on, I would love to hear his take more in depth about the Academy. I think that's very important, that people need to hear about the culture of the Academy. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on getting Tony Bova on the show. Hopefully he can come over, give me an hour here, and you know, we'll get more into the Academy. So, all right, I'm going to head out for the evening. I love all of you. Thank you for continuing to support my my platforms. I don't know. We'll be back in a couple of days here if I'm not back before the 4th of July. Everybody have an amazing, safe 4th of July. It's good to see everybody here. And again, like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to head out. Please be safe. I love you all, and thank you for the continued support. Talk to you all soon. I'm out. Peace.